This is the FM Gold channel of All India Radio. In the program News Analysis, we now bring you a discussion on World Biofuel Day. The participants are Mukul, Sanwal, Environmentalist, and M.Rajendran, journalist.
In the last decade, globally, biofuels have caught the attention of policymakers, and it's imperative for a country like India to keep up the pace of developments in the field of biofuels. Biofuels in India are of strategic importance as it augurs well with the ongoing initiative of the government such as Make in India, Swachh Bharat Abhiyan and skill development. It also offers a great opportunity to integrate with the ambitious target of doubling of farmers' income, import reduction, employment generation and waste to wealth creation. Biofuels have the benefits of reducing import dependency on crude oil and ensures cleaner environment in addition to employment generation in rural areas. However, the biofuels program in India has been largely impacted due to the sustained and quantum non-availability of domestic feedstock for biofuel production, which needs to be addressed and addressed in a serious manner. Since the last 3 years, August 10th, today, is observed as World Biofuel Day, which is to create awareness about the importance of non-fossil fuels as an alternative to conventional fossil fuels. The question is, India has a national policy on biofuels and there is a thrust to use it commercially. Mr. Sanwal, what other measures are required to help India unlock its biofuel potential?
You see, so far in the Western world and even countries like China or Asia, biofuels was considered as a substitute to oil. Because when the oil price increased in the mid-70s, Brazil, for example, had a lot of sugarcane and they went into a biofuel or ethanol policy to blend ethanol with fuel oil, gasoline, and to reduce imports. Now, so far, that has been the trend throughout the world. What is new in what the Prime Minister has announced is that it is not just a substitute or an additive to oil to reduce import dependency, because India does not have oil of its own sufficient for its needs, which are going to increase. But he has linked it with agriculture and he has linked it with employment and the increasing demand for oil that is going to take place with urbanization. Now, these linkages, I think, are unique in the world because this is also an evidence of our own policy of development, our own approach to development, rather than copying Western models. The second important issue with this is that it adopts a commercial rather than a subsidized approach. Now, once something is commercial and you have taken care of not only the production but also the marketing, then it can be self-sustaining. The third key element is that agriculture has suffered not only in India but throughout the world because of the differential in prices between what the farmers gets and what the urban consumer is prepared to pay. If you increase farm prices, then it leads to inflation. If you are worried about the consumer interest, then the farmer doesn't get an economic return. But once you make the farm produce into a commercial entity, rather than just a perishable food crop, then the economics or the dynamics change considerably. Now, what has happened here is that oil marketing companies have been involved in a very big way. Now, that means that it is going to be a commercial activity upfront. The farmer will not need to worry about fluctuation in prices. For example, we have seen in our country itself, a few months back, there was overproduction of milk and farmers were not getting a remunerative price. We have read about the increase or the fluctuation prices and production in tomatoes, onions, even sugarcane. What happens with agricultural produce is that once if prices go up and we are increasingly going to be linked with an international market, then either countries abroad want us to reduce our tariff so that they can export, or if international prices are lower, then the farmer doesn't get a remunerative price. Now, all these fluctuations that the farmer has to suffer, in addition to the vagaries of nature, international competition, the tension between the farmer and the urban consumer, is taken care of in a model that looks at the waste the farmer produces or looks at certain crops that the farmer produces and converts them to commercial use through the introduction of technology so that they are delinked from market prices in a sense, or fluctuations of the market. And that, I think, is a very important step.
The national policy covers most of the points which you have raised, Mr. Sanwal. How do you see actual execution happening?
It is going to be complex because different sectors, different interests, different groups are involved. You have the farmers, you will have a technology element, you will have transportation, you will have a marketing element, for example. But the fact that the way the Prime Minister has described it, one gets the clear impression that these details have been well thought out. And I think the monitoring element is itself built into what has been announced by Prime Minister, that this is part of the strategy or policy of the government to double farm incomes. So the interest in the West is substitution of oil or saving foreign exchange or dealing with climate change. But here it appears that the primary driver or the primary motivation of the scheme is to double farm incomes. Now if that is the case, and it appears to be so from the announcements, then the monitoring element is built into this, that the farmer's interest will be primary. And once the farmer's interest is primary in a country like India, where 60% of our population more is dependent on agriculture, and it will continue to be dependent on agriculture, India's prosperity throughout civilization for thousands of years has been agricultural production, 2 or 3 crops because we have 2 monsoons. No other country in the world has 2 monsoons. We don't need irrigation, we just need to conserve the monsoon water. So this is more of a long-term arrangement of increasing farm incomes. And in the bargain, we will save foreign exchange, we will save the environment, and we will have less pollution in the cities.
A kind of benchmark has been set with this kind of initiative in addition to the national policy, but also holding a World Biofuel Day. I think it brings some kind of awareness. Otherwise, these things get lost in the routine process of government handling.
Making an announcement on occasion of Biofuel Day is important because it gives a signal not only to the ministries in Delhi but also to the states and to the international world that India is thinking differently. India is not just reacting to what comes to us from the West, but we have our own ideas and we are developing our own way of looking at our world. Apart from the traditional linkage with agriculture, the Prime Minister has also linked it with urban waste. Now we know that urban waste is a major issue not only in India but throughout the world. And as populations shift to the cities, nearly 75 to 80% of population in Europe, America and Japan is living in cities. 65 to 70% is living in cities in China. As more of our populations from the current 40-45 shifts to cities, this urban waste problem is going to become more and more acute. Now, the traditional method of dealing with urban waste is to burn it. But nobody wants that incinerator on their backyard. Not only in India, throughout the world, because it is toxic pollution. If you have a different way of dealing with that waste, that itself solves another problem that we are going to face, that society has faced in other countries too. So the fact that there is an effort to link all these issues which have remained unresolved in a sense into an integrated project, I think is something unique. And yes, it is going to be difficult. But as I said earlier, the fact that it has been linked with some of these elements which can be easily monitored has far improved. What is the percentage in use in fuel and gasoline or oil? How much urban waste has been dealt with? So there is a built-in element of monitoring or review, and I think this is a program that will succeed because it links up with something that the public is conscious about and public will support this.
The government has taken a number of initiatives to increase blending of biofuels. One of the examples of the thrust which is being given. Some of the initiatives have already started giving positive results as you have been mentioning. Like ethanol blending in petrol has increased from 38 crore litres in the ethanol supply in 13-14 to an estimated 141 crore litres in ethanol supply in 17-18, which is a big achievement, which means the process has begun. At least the first steps have been taken. Then the oil public sector companies are now planning to set up 12 second-generation biorefineries, which will augment the ethanol supply and also address the environmental issues arising out of burning of agriculture biomass and other waste. But biofuels industry success in India needs much more thrust. How can we address these issues?
When we looked at ethanol, we looked at the model that had worked in Brazil, for example, or with sugar beet in Europe. And we looked at one product which had market fluctuation because of supply-demand constraints. In India too, there are years when you have surplus production of sugar, more farmers start planting sugarcane, and then the next year the prices crash and there is a problem. Now part of that sugarcane or molasses was converted to alcohol earlier and now into ethanol. But that was industry specific. That was just looking at one part of the picture. Now what the Prime Minister is saying that it is not that we try to help an industry, because the ethanol project was essentially helping an industry. Not only in India but also in Brazil, for example, which had a huge amount of sugarcane, but they had market problems. So they took the opportunity of the oil price increase to support the sugar industry and the sugar farmers to get into ethanol. But this is a much wider project. As you have just said, the setting up of major refineries by the oil marketing companies links it more with the oil sector than with the agriculture sector. Because that is the model that the oil sector is used to. You get oil from somewhere, you refine it, and then you market it. That's one. Two, when the Prime Minister is talking about first generation, second generation, and third generation biofuels, you are also talking of technological upgradation as part of the project. Now that itself is another important feature, that you are conscious of the fact that for the program to achieve its full potential, you will need more and more technology, better technology, wider scale of produce. Other produce than sugarcane will go into this, and larger share of farm incomes will be involved. And at the end of it, we will find that we are going to save money on the import of petrol. This is a major factor for most countries that is coming up, that oil price fluctuates, oil demand is going to increase, India doesn't have enough oil production, but India has surplus in agricultural production. Now that linkage, I think, that shift in thinking from looking at this issue earlier as one of agriculture and blending because of climate or other considerations to prepare a holistic project, an integrated project that looks at it in a wider scope as part of the development of agriculture, and the link between rural and urban societies, economies, I think is new, and that is what makes one feel that it is going to succeed.
From experience, we have seen the role of private players in any of the sectors, especially after the reforms had been initiated in the country. Do you think there is enough opportunity or attractiveness, you mentioned about industry, for the private sector to come into this industry? Because what it will do is it will propel the government vision and thinking and also implement it in a much commercial way. As you mentioned in the beginning, the subsidy element gets out and the commercial element comes in. That has been a success in various sectors we have seen.
We were traditionally looking at supplementing agricultural income through horticulture or some small industry, handicrafts. That was the traditional way of looking at increasing farm incomes, other than giving the manufacturing sector jobs. Now we found that giving the young population that we have, giving them manufactured jobs may not be possible because we are facing increasing competition in the international scene. Now here this is an Indian solution to an Indian problem, that you create employment opportunities for people in the rural sector, but not based on agriculture, but based on some commercial or industrial activity. It could be a very simple commercial or industrial activity, but it will not be agriculture, it will be an industrial activity. That will raise incomes. Now that is new. Secondly, what is new is that you are looking at the agriculture sector, bringing in commercialization, bringing in some element of industrialization, but you are looking at also the marketing side to it, which is a traditional problem for agriculture. Now, as we are increasing our road network, we are connecting villages and district level with road infrastructure. We are taking electricity there. So the next level of development requires that we provide these kind of employment opportunities for people in small towns, in the rural areas. We cannot have the model of the West. So this is an Indian solution to an Indian problem and seems to be very well thought out.
Do you think we need more skilled manpower for this sector?
There will be need for skilled manpower, but that will be more in the level of a technician rather than a graduate. Because you need to operate some simple plants, you need to keep some accounting, maybe you need to introduce new crops. And that is the kind of skill will be available in the small towns or in the rural areas, what we call the ITIs, not the IITs. We don't need that kind of skill arrangement because these are small scale activities. They will be dispersed activities. And I think this has a great future because it will provide employment to people in rural areas who are educated, who can do this kind of commercial or industrial activity based on agriculture but not agricultural activity. And it will give a very solid income to people.
So it looks like a step in the right direction not only has been taken, but the issue will help India to take care of its import dependency and also ensure Indian solution to an Indian problem. Thank you so much.
You were listening to a discussion on World Biofuel Day. The participants were Mukul Sanwal, Environmentalist, and M.Rajendran, Journalist. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of All India Radio. This program is also available on our website, newsonair.nic.in. You may email your opinion about this program at airnsttalks@gmail.com.